Was this the sequel we were supposed to get years ago? It definitely feels like it because to me, Dying Light the Beast takes everything that made the first game so good, but it also takes a bit of what made Dying Light 2 different and continues to build on that formula in ways that really made it hard for me to put the game down. See, I came into Dying Light the Beast without much expectations at all. In fact, I really wasn't even hyped for the game, nor did I watch any of the previews or read any of the reviews before deciding to dive in. I kind of did it on a whim. Either way, after wrapping up the main story and knocking out a number of side missions, I came to the conclusion that I may like this game even better than the original. But why? Well, let's get into it. Now, on this channel, I've reviewed both the original Dying Light and Dying Light 2. I had mixed feelings about the second game, but I do feel like it's improved quite a bit since its initial launch. The original, however, felt like a game that was one of a kind. It felt like a gem to me. For example, it managed to capture that sense of fear and anxiousness when roaming at night that the second game completely missed. There was something to be said about the atmosphere, the physics engine, and even the tone that the second game just couldn't capture for some reason. And honestly, I couldn't vibe with Aiden as a main character, and the terrible writing mixed with the lackluster voice acting made the actual story in Dying Light 2 a tough time to get through. Don't even get me started on Aiden Bobaden. That being said, it doesn't mean Dying Light's original story was an Emmy Award-winning narrative. I'm not gonna go that far at all. It had the same run-of-the-mill bad guy trying to control the city that we've all come to know too well. And yeah, even the Beast has those same exact narrative structures, but we'll get into that in a little bit. Now, I have a lot to say about the game, but I think it first needs to be commended for its performance. I run a pretty dated graphics card, a 2070. Yes, I know, you don't need to remind me. The fact that I was running this game at 1440p on medium settings, of course using DLSS in quality mode, and constantly being at or above 60 frames per second is a modern miracle. Studios are often called out for releasing games with shoddy performance, Borderlands 4 of course being the latest one to get that treatment, and of course they deserve it. Why are you releasing games that hardly perform on modern hardware and okay, even older hardware like my own, but I understand it's time for an upgrade. Now, it's only right we give praise to studios who clearly prioritize technical performance because outside of very few hitches during my playtime, the game ran flawlessly for me. Great job, Techland. Now, let's start with the open world, shall we? It's really hard to top Haran as a playable city. Honestly, I felt like that map was wonderfully designed. The verticality mixed in with all the different buildings you can freely go in and out of, to scavenge loot from, and the way it lends itself to the parkour system was all really well done. The setting in Dying Light the Beast takes place in Castor Woods, which is basically like a fictional European region. This location is far different from what we've seen in the series before. See, Dying Light 1 and 2 were very city-focused, especially Dying Light 2. The Beast, however, takes a different approach by switching up the landscape quite substantially. That's not to say there isn't a city to run around in, there definitely is, there's also residential neighborhoods and so on, but in addition to that, there are large swaths of forest to go through, different mountain trails to freely explore, and even rural areas outside the main city along the countryside. It works really well, far better than I even expected it to. In fact, it might have become my favorite of the series. Of course, that opinion might change if I go back and play through Dying Light 1 again, but in all seriousness, I think the variety that it offered within the map itself is really well done. As always, I loved jumping through the different buildings and cleaning them out for every last resource I can find. The game continues to do what the series has always done well, and that's making all sorts of buildings enterable and lootable. To some, that may not seem like a big deal, but for me it helps quite a lot with immersion, and overall, honestly, it's just fun to loot in this game for some reason. I have no idea why. But it's not just the setting that brings the game to life. It's the organic and dynamic open world that the Dying Light series continues to excel in. What I loved most about exploring in the Beast was how often a distraction would catch my attention. Moving from mission to mission can have so many diversions that I'll completely forget what my original goal was. As you move within the city, you'll come across dark zones. These are similar to the activities that we saw in the second Dying Light, but I would say they're on a much smaller scale which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Essentially, each of these dark zones have really specific pieces of loot associated with them. That way you can determine whether or not doing the activity is worth it to you. Most of these dark zones have a couple of special zombie types roaming in them, but clearing them takes about 5 minutes max. Outside of that, there are a number of safe houses to capture, substations to bring power to, and random encounters to lend your help with, as well as convoys to loot. Convoys, of course, being vehicles holding military-grade loot. I should mention that these safe houses and dark zones are worth doing not just for the loot, but also because you'll gain blueprints for new gadgets such as shock knives, Molotovs, and so much more. Now, as far as the amount of activities to do, there isn't a huge variety, but what's there is definitely worth doing. If you want a direct comparison between The Beast and Dying Light 2, then The Beast is definitely smaller in terms of scope and in terms of things to do, but that also means it's much more focused. Think of going from Assassin's Creed Valhalla to Assassin's Creed Mirage, for example, as far as map size and activities go. Now, The Beast does introduce vehicles as a way to get around, which honestly ended up being one of my favorite aspects. Originally, I thought using a car would take away substantially from the parkour experience, but the way the map is designed really makes having a car pretty useful and ultimately crucial. It's mentioned the map has areas where there really aren't any buildings or things to parkour around on, so having a car to get through the countryside is super helpful, especially when nightfall is quickly approaching. The fact that you can run out of gas and you need to keep an eye on your fuel level is also a nice touch, adding an extra hint of survival to the whole driving aspect. Of course, we do have to talk about the nighttime, and it's something the game has managed to pull off. It feels almost like the original. That sense of dread when night approaches is back, and that tension that comes with it is there as well. Chases still exist, and getting seen by a volatile triggers one. Whenever this happens, obviously your best bet is to run to the nearest safe house or find somewhere to hide. I'll be completely honest, the nighttime in the first Dying Light game gave me a huge adrenaline rush, and I almost felt the same way again in The Beast. All in all though, I really did like the map, the amount of activities to do, and how focused and refined the entire playable area was. Now let's talk about gameplay because there's a lot of good here as well. First off, I think the gore system is the best that the series has seen. Swinging a sharp object like a machete will have zombies' faces getting cut in half, heads splitting open, limbs flying off. It's over the top, but I love it because of how impactful every swing feels. They managed to capture that sense of impact in a way that other games simply just do not. Charging up a power hit with a great axe feels amazing, and the results are obviously quite deadly. Seeing the blood splatter all over the place as you swing is equally as satisfying. The combat just feels good. There really isn't much more I can say because it's one of those things you have to try for yourself and get a feel for it to understand how good swinging a weapon feels. Now I'm just going to bring up a minor annoyance here that I feel plagued my playthrough. It isn't a big deal, but it's something I ended up just noting down here in my notes. That, of course, being the zombie grabs. Yes, the zombies in the game seem to be able to grab through your swings at times. There really isn't even a warning that they're about to grab. They sort of just abruptly do it. Sometimes it can definitely get annoying trying to fend off a large group of them, and you're just constantly being grabbed. It's not a game breaker, and I think it's something that's going to be patched up pretty quickly, but it is just something that I had to mention. Anyway, new to this game is the Beast Meter. This is basically a way for Crane to transform into an unstoppable monster where he can kill anything and everything within a few swings. This is built up both by taking damage and dishing damage out. At first, Crane can't even control this, so you might set off the beast mode when there's barely any enemies around, but as you work your way through the beast skill tree, you'll gain the ability to control it, but more on the skill tree later. Of course, the combat can get as hectic as you see fit. The game continues to offer up a number of environmental traps and things such as gas canisters to spice things up. The combat itself was very fun. This was half the reason I would go off the beaten path and knock out side content because I knew I was looking forward to my next encounter. That in itself is good game design. Would I have liked to go do these extra side missions if I found the combat to be boring? I doubt it. Gunplay quickly becomes an option in the Beast, and I am very thankful for that. One of my biggest issues with the first Dying Light was that the gunplay felt like it was introduced too late in the game and it just felt a bit overpowered. Near the end of the game, I was farming the volatiles from a distance at night and leveling pretty quickly since you get the double XP. This time around, the beast introduces gunplay within the first couple of hours with a pistol that you can use. The guns remain very impactful, however, ammo is fairly scarce. I think the gunplay is better than the first game's rendition, but again, it's nothing to write home about. It's solid and it gets the job done, but it doesn't feel as impactful as the melee combat does. Still, a shotgun blast was pretty satisfying. The game gives you a bevy of options when it comes to combat, and I found the selection of both weapons and gadgets to be quite good. You can even approach combat as stealthy as you want with a ranger bow, picking off enemies with headshots, throwing knives, or walking up and choking them out the old school way. Overall, the combat in this game is as good as it gets. The inventory system has seen some changes, and this is where we see a combination of the two games. I think this takes the best of both worlds given Dying Light 2's loot-driven style and Dying Light 1's more grounded approach. Crane has a number of equipment slots for his gear, ranging from shirt, legs, boots, bracers, helmets, and so on. These equipment slots sort of help in crafting your own build. For example, there's a set that helps with XP gain, or one that focuses much more on stealth, or even two-handed weapon wielding, and so on. Each item has a gear armor score, and I believe this is also tied to the game's leveling system, meaning the higher your gear armor score, the more comfortably you can approach the higher level areas. The clothing items can't be crafted. These are usually the reward for like clearing safe houses, side missions, and main missions. And of course, you'll find some at traders as well. The weapon customization system is as strong as ever. I love the system in every game in the series, and the Beast is obviously no exception. Also, shout out to the UI developer who made this much cleaner UI in comparison to Dying Light 2. Anyway, you can customize weapons to your heart's content, depending on a weapon rarity level, which ranges from common to legendary. You'll have a number of different weapon mod slots to choose from. If you're familiar with this series, you'll know these slots serve as modifiers for different damage types, such as inflicting freeze, fire, poison, or shock damage. This system has been a staple of the franchise and continues to be. It's somewhere I spend a good chunk of my time and personally trying to come up with fun combinations of different modifiers. The new addition this time around are manual pages. These replace the insane amount of collecting you had to do in Dying Light 2 in order to upgrade a blueprint or even craft an item. Again, this gives you another reason to go in and scavenge dark zones, as these instruction manuals are crucial to upgrading your existing blueprints that are used to craft all sorts of items like healing, gadgets, and weapons. This refinement in the upgrade process overall was heavily needed, as it takes so much of that unnecessary grind away that was introduced in the second game. I love the way they approach the upgrade system this time around. So I'm kind of going out of order here, but let me talk about traversal and parkour in general. The parkour is satisfying. To start out, it's not as smooth as I had hoped, but Crane, as he levels, ends up gaining more parkour efficiency, and by the time I was deep into the game, the parkour felt as good as ever. It's a crucial part of the game, as you might expect, as getting around the city and avoiding zombies will ask you to engage with the system quite heavily. There are other modes of traversal that were added, such as the grappling hook that we did not see in the original Dying Light, and the map really lends itself to its use, as you can theoretically swing from tree to tree like some kind of zombie-slaying Spider-Man, but I honestly couldn't ever get it to work as fluidly as I liked. Now, let's talk about the skill system, which is probably the biggest change from the series past, and I think something that will likely be where people both agree and disagree with one another. In previous Dying Light games, the more you do a certain action, the more XP you get for that specific skill set. For example, killing zombies in the first Dying Light gave you combat XP, and parkouring around the city gave you parkour XP. These abilities were split into two trees so that you can level them independently. This same system existed in Dying Light 2 as well. Beast, however, completely turns this on its head, getting rid of that separation between parkour and combat XP and making the skill trees more refined as well. It feels like overall there's less freedom in the decision making that you make, but at the same time, it takes away a lot of that grind that existed in previous titles. You still, of course, get XP for killing zombies, but the main way you'll level in this game is by doing side quests and main missions. That being said, the skill tree itself is fine. The options you have all do affect gameplay in some form or fashion. Some skills will unlock new crafting blueprints, others will make your melee more impactful or your weapons long laster with their durability. What's most interesting is the skill system that is tied to the Beast skill tree, as these skills are only unlocked by killing Chimera. These skills only modify your beast mode, giving you access to new moves to pull off while you're in that state. Overall, the skill tree, in my opinion, feels a bit more restricted, but at the same time, it feels more refined and focused. It just took me personally a bit of getting used to given this series' past approach to leveling, and I'd be curious to know if you felt the same way during your playthrough. Now, I'm going to make a quick note on enemy variety. The game does have a very solid number of different affected to go up against. You got the heavy bruiser types that are just pure tanks, the regular infected who can be taken down in a few swipes. You got the virals who will chase you down and are much quicker than your normal infected. You also have the bloated dudes who explode, these poison sniper guys, and the nighttime also has the volatiles and the bolters and so on. My favorite dude to kill was the guy who had the camping gear because he would drop so much good loot. Anyway, let's move on to mission structure and story. Honestly, bringing Crane back was probably the best decision Techland could have ever made. The opinion on Dying Light 2 is quite mixed. Some serious fans like it and others absolutely despise it. I was kind of in the middle, but that's the thing about sequels. You're almost always going to make somebody unhappy. Crane's story, however, was never finished, and a continuation of it was originally planned as a DLC for Dying Light 2, but turning it into a full-fledged title was very wise. Now, I'm not going to spoil a single thing in this section outside of the obvious that's needed to set the story up. In the first Dying Light, the story revolved mainly around antizin, a drug that acts as a temporary cure for the virus that eventually turns people into infected. In The Beast, the idea of antizin is completely abandoned, and the story revolves around a man named the Baron who's attempting to genetically engineer advanced infected, known as chimeras. These chimeras are pretty self-explanatory. They are infected who are often mutated in some form or fashion, giving some kind of special ability such as super strength, stealth, poison, and so on. This setup actually ends up making the game have two subplots, one of which is where you're trying to get to the Baron, and the other being one where you hunt down Chimera. I absolutely love this idea. This makes Crane essentially a Chimera hunter who injects himself with that Chimera's blood to further his own ability. And of course, it's definitely worth mentioning that these Chimera fights all feel unique from one another. One fight had this weird stalking infected which would go in and hide in the fog, then appear in the sky and try to strike me. Another fight had a Chimera who would throw poison at or around me, making the arena one big hazard. Outside of that, of course, you have the typical mission setup where you go into a number of different locations, you fight off some bad guys, you power a few generators, and take down a boss. The story itself is fine. Again, I won't spoil anything, but it's not something we haven't seen before. You have your standard betrayals, bad guy who wants to rule the world, and then upstart community of rebels who are just trying to fight back. Thankfully, the writing and voice acting, in my opinion, is far better than what we got in Dying Light 2. Overall, in my opinion, the story is serviceable, and the Chimera hunt for me was something that I looked forward to, and that was more than enough to keep my simple mind engaged all the way. Anyway, this video is starting to run a bit long, so let's go ahead and wrap this up. Dying Light the Beast, in my opinion, is a return to form that the series sorely needed. The gameplay systems, map, inventory are all refined and refocused in ways that remove a lot of the bloat from the game, making it an experience that doesn't waste your time and one that rewards you for going off the beaten path and exploring freely. What it adds are things that are for the better, and what it takes away are things that I don't think anyone will miss. All in all, in my opinion, I think Dying Light is a worthy game that I can fully recommend picking up. Thank you all for watching this video as always. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to hit the like button. If you're new here, subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one.